Started. Hello, welcome everyone to the Good Friday edition of Focus Friday. Good Friday because we all get to get together again. And if you're religious, Good Friday for other reasons. On the screen, you will see the housekeeping, pretty standard. Also remember that this is being recorded. Renee, you want to say hello?
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today. We appreciate it, especially with the holidays.
Absolutely. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Close that. So in my Back to Basics segment, this time we're going to talk about joins, and it's going to be a high-level overview of joins. And do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So joins are used when you have multiple files that you have data and you want to incorporate all the data in one report. So the different types of combining data are join, match, and more. And today we're going to talk about join. So the joins, you can have an equal join or equijoin. It could be conditional. You can join based on real fields in the database or virtual fields that you created in a define. You can have a one-to-one join or a one-to-many. It could be a focused managed join or an interface managed join. And we're going to talk a little bit about the differences of those and what to look for. And you can have same or different file types. So I could take an Oracle table and join it to a Microsoft SQL Server table. They don't have to be all the same. All right. Simple join, we have table A to table B. We might have more than two tables being joined together, A to B and then B to C. Or I might have a relationship where A is related to B and A is related to C, meaning there is really no correlation between B and C. So when you do a join, it takes all of the fields and all of the tables you're joining and puts them together horizontally. So you have access to all the fields and all the files. Let's see. For some of my examples, I took the emp data file and I moved it over to a relational table and I called it emp data queue. So emp data queue is basically just a copy of emp data, but it's using the MySQL database. I also took training queue and put that over there also. So let's talk about the different join types. If you're fluent in SQL, you probably know these already. We have an inner join and a left outer join. An inner join gives you the intersection. The left outer join gives you everything from the host, including records on the cross-reference that you don't have a matched record for. So you have everything on the host, regardless of if you match on the cross-reference. Notice that on the here I said join types universal because these can be done for any join structure. We also have adapter specific where you can do a full outer or a right outer. Now I believe in the newer versions that these are all universal at this point, but for a good rule of practice is if you're doing this similar type joins or if you're doing a focused managed join, you want to use the universal ones as opposed to doing one of the adapter types as a full outer. It just makes processing a little more simpler. Instance type, you have a join to multiple or all. This is for a focused managed join. If you're doing a join to all or join to multiple, and you're saying I have multiple records in the cross-reference that I could join to. So in the example I'm going to do, I have the employee file, emp data, and I have training. So an employee can take multiple courses. So in that case, I would probably do a join to multiple or join to all. If you have a short path, if you have a record where you have a host but no cross-reference, then that missing record is going to be denoted by a period, the no data character. For single or unique, which if you don't specify is the default, for focus managed, you return only one matching row. So if you have multiple matching rows, but you said single or unique, then you're only going to get one of them back. In this case, because you're saying it's unique, we propagate the cross-reference fields into the parent, so there never is a missing segment. So if you do have a short path, what's going to happen is for alpha values, you'll get a space, and for numeric values, you'll get a 0. Where the multiple all, you will get the no missing character. The instance type does not affect the result set of a relationally managed join. You will get back all matching children regardless. So that's something to differentiate between focus managed and relational managed. So here's an example. The syntax is join. This particular join is a where-based join, a conditional join. How do I know? Because I see the where in the join statement. Pretty simple. So join left outer. So I'm doing a left outer join on file empdataQ, and I'm telling it to look at the pin segment. That's what the at does. And I'm saying it's a unique file training queue, and also at the pin segment in training queue. I have tags for the cross-reference, and I have my join identifier as J1. And I say where pin in empdata equals pin in the J1, which is the training. So if I run that, I get this report. So I get last name, first name, course code. But notice course code is blank for Michael Bella. So why is that? Well, he didn't take any courses yet. So it became a short path, and because I did a join to unique, I'm getting the blank. Notice even though I said it was to unique, Lois Casanova is showing her 2 classes that she took, even though I told the join it was to unique. Okay, this is the generic syntax, join, left outer or inner, host file name, at, and then a field, and then the field is going to be in a segment in your host. You can give it a tag. 2, unique or multiple, cross-reference file, at, again, a field in a segment with a tag, as join name, and then you have your where expressions. If you have multiple where expressions, you need to separate each one with a semicolon. Or you just have one compound where expression 1, and expression 2. Yeah, sure. Let's get my QA up just in case. Okay. In here, we can do the tag, and the tag is like an alias name for the table. If you're going to use a tag, make sure you specify the tag keyword. I was working with this the other day, and I'm like, oh, well, in normal SQL, I don't have to put the tag or the word tag. I can just say table name, space, and then the alias name for that table, which would be the tag. But when I did it in our join, the tag word had to be there. Is there a benefit to doing a conditional join over just doing this in your select statement? All right, so we're talking focus code, so we don't really have a select statement. You're going to have a table file, which will then get translated into a select, and the where condition will get transferred into the select statement as your join predicate. So if you're doing a left outer join, you're going to have in your join, left outer join, table 1. You're going to have from table 1, left outer join table 2, and then the word on with your join predicate. And that's where this where comes in. I could have just put, if I'm doing an inner join, I could have just put it in the where condition in the table requests, which I think is what you're alluding to. But again, that would be inner versus left outer. Okay. No problem. So if you're doing an equality-based join, you're just going to say join left outer or inner, and then your list of fields that you're joining on in your host. Again, you can put a tag, and then to unique multiple, and then your fields that you're joining to in the cross-reference file. Again, tags and your as name. There's no where condition here. It is implied that you're doing an equality test on your fields that you reference in the host field list and the fields you're listing in the cross-reference field list. If you're doing it based on a define-based join, you want to do a join, but you don't have the field directly, you can do a define-based join and create a define expression. So you would say, it's the same as the equality-based join, but you're just going to add the with field after the define field in the cross-reference in the host. So I have join left outer inner define field with field. The with field has to reference a real field that's in your synonym, in your master. So what happens is if you do a join and you had defines prior to the join, you are going to lose your defines because we clear them unless you have a setting called keep defines turned on. So what you do is you do your join. This tells it it's with a real field. It's a defined field. So don't worry that you don't see it because coming later down in your code, you should have a defined section which then defines it. So we talked about interface managed, relationally managed, or focus managed. So it will be interface managed if both the host and cross references have the same suffix. So if they're all both SQL MSS, SQL Aura, SQL MySQL, they would have to be both the exact same suffix. Optimization would have to be turned on. And one thing that I see is missing is they have to both use the same connection. So if you have multiple connections into your databases for different purposes, you'd have to make sure that you're running against the same connection. Focus managed, if that all fails, it becomes focus managed. So you could have a different file types, your optimization is turned off, or focus decides to turn the optimization off. Why would that happen? Well, you would have to check the traces, but it'll tell you, well, maybe you're doing a defined expression that we weren't able to pass to the relational engine. In that case, we would turn off optimization, bring back the data to do the calculation, and we would then do the processing. Left outer versus inner. So if you're doing a relationally managed join, an interface managed join, you should just explicitly state on the join what you want. I want inner, I want left outer. If it's focus managed, well, this is a little trickier because it's controlled by the instance type. Is it a unique join or a multiple join? If I do a unique join, or if I want an inner join, you're going to do a join to all or multiple, and we have a setting set all equals. So if you want to do a join to everything and do an inner join, you want to set all equals off, because a one-to-many join by default will give you only the matching records. If you want an inner join and you're doing a join to unique, you would have to add an explicit where condition to your table request, because the default behavior of a join to unique will give you everything from the host file. Because as I said previously, if you're joined to unique, we take that cross-reference segment and propagate it so that it looks like it's part of the parent segment. So therefore, there are no missing records. So everything has a match. If you want to do a left outer join and you're joining to unique, you're good, because that's the default behavior. If you're going to all or multiple, now you want to change that all setting and say, I want all to be on, and then that will give you all of the matching records, plus the short pass. All right, so we showed you some join syntax. Now I'm going to talk about a cluster synonym. So here's my two tables again, the emp data queue and the training queue. If I'm going to join them, I can join left outer pin in emp data queue to all pin in training queue. It's about as simple as we can get. I could have also said as J1, but if I only have one join, I don't need to give it a join tag, which is what the as J1 is. Or we could have made it this way, adding the tags and adding the join tag. And lastly, we could have made it a where-based join, a conditional join. All of these will give you the same results. Is there a benefit of doing one over the other? Not really. The alternative is if I know I'm always going to report on these two tables together, I can create what we call a cluster synonym, a cluster master. So here we have the file name. I called it emp train cluster. The first segment is emp info. And we say the cross-reference file is the emp data queue. So we point to the master for that particular table. And we say CR include all. The CR include equals all will basically then include all of the fields, all of the columns in that table, in that synonym. Seg name also has a CR file and a CR include all, but now we added the join type and the join where. So we have the type of the join and what the where condition is that relate the two tables. All right, let me just come back here. The behavior is a little different when you do the direct join command versus the cluster. So in the cluster, if I only access fields in train info so that my query only really needs that one table, I'm only going to do a select on that table. So if you have some type of relationship between info and training info that you want to enforce, that's not going to work because you have to reference fields in both segments. Otherwise, you're only going to get information from one of the segments. The difference between using the command is you always go in through the host. So if I only reference fields using a join command, I'm only referencing training fields or columns, then it's going to have to go through mdata anyway, because it has to follow the path. Where the cluster, only the fields in the segments that you reference are going to be included. So just keep that in mind when you're running and if you're using the cluster synonyms. All right, multiple tables. So we talked about you could have A to B to C, or you could have A to B, A to C relationships. So to get this relationship where I have two tables off of a main table, I'm going to join column 1 in file A to multiple column 1 in file B. Does it have to be multiple? No, I'm just using that for the example. And then we have a second join going from file A to file C. And the first, because I have multiple joins, I'm going to use the join tag of J1 and J2. But what if I'm going from file A to file B? Let's go back. So I'm going to have my join just like we had before. But now I want to go from B to C, not A to C. So what I have to do is in the join syntax, if you have multiple joins that are all related, the host has to be the same name for all of the join commands. So what I have to do then is say join file B dot col2b. So I'm taking a field in column in table B, but I'm saying it's in file A. And technically it is because we have the first join. And then we're going to multiple column C. The difference between these two examples is A to B, A to C has two paths, right? You have the one going to the left, one going to the right. This particular configuration only has one path, A to B to C. And then sometimes you might need to do that. Recursive join is if I join to the same table multiple times. So I'm going A to A. So I'm going to join column A in file A to column 2A in file A. So I'm joining to a different column in the same table. You could have also done it with the tags, which makes life a whole lot easier because then you know if you're putting a T1 tag, you're getting the first reference to column A. And if you do T2, you're getting the second reference. Now, when would you do this? Probably some type of organizational chart. So you have a manager or you have an employee and you want to see the employee's manager, but then you also want to see the manager's manager. So that's where you could do a recursive join back in and work your way up the hierarchy. That just talked about easier to use the tags. If you have this, since this is the same file, you're going to have duplicate field names. So it's always best to use the tags in order to differentiate, do I want department in the first reference or the second reference? Because a lot of times we will just take the join name and prefix it with the field name. So if you don't have tags, that's what you're going to have to use. So the main file would be the actual field name, but the second cross-reference version would be, in this case, J1 dept, like we have here. And if there's ever a doubt, if you use a field name that you think it should be and you get an error that it couldn't find the field, do the question mark FF on the host file after the join command, and then it'll tell you exactly what field names that it sees, and that's going to use. All right, that's all I have for this. Any questions? Okay, then I will stop sharing and pass it over to Renee.
Thank you, Walter. Great presentation. Thanks. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. All right. You should see the WebFOCUS Hub. See my screen?
I do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you, everyone, for attending today's session. Again, I know with the holiday and everything, it's quite wonderful that you're joining us and taking that time out of your day. We really do truly appreciate it. And hopefully the session will make it worthwhile. So today's session is all about WebFOCUS Designer at an introductory beginner level generating reports, particularly table file, right? Obviously, Designer gives you a great deal of flexibility in creating all different types of chart visualizations, as well as with our HTML extensions, chart extensions. So, and those are great capabilities, but just generating a report and understanding some of the functions and the capabilities that are within Designer is really a key part of this. So I'm going to start off as try to level set for, I know we have different levels, people in the audience at different levels of understanding what Designer is capable of. So I'll try to give you all of the little nuances that you would need to really get started creating reports with Designer. So how do we get to Designer navigation? We do the plus, create visualizations. And what that does is it brings up Designer. And the first thing is you have to select the data source. It could be a synonym, a master file description, or it could be a reporting object. In this case, I'm going to utilize our retail sample, WF Retail Lite. This is a flat file. It's not a relational table, but it certainly could be. And that's available through your administrator on the reporting server console for tutorial options where you can create WF Retail Lite for that reference, just in case you need it. So you can create visualization. If I wanted to do something additional with the data, I could click Prepare Extract here. That'll bring you to the Data tab of Designer. But we're going to create visualization, or I could have just double-clicked and it would have brought me in as well. And I just want to spend like 2 minutes just going over the Designer canvas very quick. Just again, this is meant to be a beginner's guide, so just to get you started so that you're familiar with the layout, which is important. So the very top bar over here is what we call the Designer toolbar. And on the very left-hand side, we have this little application menu, hamburger menu. It's called, if you hover, it says WebFOCUS Designer menu. And here you could open a new designer window. You can open an existing one. You could do save. Save is also, we have an icon here that I'm hovering over. But if you need to do save as, you would come here. You can export the data or an image of the preview that you're seeing in the canvas. When you don't have anything here, you'll just get that image that you see right now. The data won't really generate anything until you put something in the buckets and into the canvas to actually showcase that. But those options are available, or I can close. Again, save. You have undo, redo. They're not available right now because we haven't done anything yet at this point, right? So we're just getting started. You have the data tab, which brings you into that data component if you need to massage your data before creating your visualization, which is not necessary for today's presentation, but certainly it's an option and available to you. So we're in the visualization portion. Over here, we have a little drop down that can control the real estate on your screen. If you want to, like if I uncheck resources, you could see those two side panels slid away. I'm going to bring them back. You could do the same thing for the settings and format. There, you can see that disappears, and then I'll bring that back, just check it back, and then even the templates here that we're going to talk about. You'll see that is hidden, and then if I check it, it comes back. So on the very left-hand side, we have this sidebar here. You might see some things grayed out depending on what you're doing within Designer and different components, whether you're creating pages, etc. You'll see certain things become available. So that's why you see certain things grayed out here. But this sidebar is directly contextually connected to the next pane, our resource panel. That's usually the fields from your synonym. You can have variables tab for some system variables that we have available. You can control your view here. I won't go into that kind of level of detail, but you certainly have that type of control there. You can search as well. And the next panel is what we call our settings and format tab. Format is definitely more of a control of the styling, etc. And you'll see drop downs here, and we'll look briefly at that near the end of the presentation. But for the settings is where you're going to spend most of your time. And what you see here can change. We call these buckets. And because by default, when you come into Designer, you're in a chart style, stack chart. You'll see the appropriate buckets that are available for that. So I won't go into detail, but the buckets will change depending on the template that you pick for your choice to create your visualization. And then if I scroll down, you'll see additional details, and that adjusts accordingly as well. But that you also, again, have this format tab for more of controlling the styling capabilities within your report or chart, within your visualization. So I'm going to leave it back on settings. And then across here, we have a visualization toolbar. And here we have the ability where we could take our single visualization that we're creating, and we can convert that to a page and create additional visualizations immediately if we wanted to. And that page is what we call an author page. We also have assemble visualizations, which assembles content that's already existing, that you've already created and standing alone on its own. There is this little filter option. If I click it, all of these things up here apply to dynamic filters. This last one applies to static filters. Static filters are this filter bucket down here that apply always to the content and don't require user interaction. Dynamic filters get dragged here on the filter toolbar. You hear it where it says drop a filter or field here. And then one of my favorite options that was added at the 9.3 release level, set command capability. That's what that little icon is. And we've given you a great deal of flexibility compared with Info Assist, and it had a few limited set commands available. There's a lot more available to you here. One that might be of interest to you is no data, changing the missing symbol, when you have missing no data to some other value for display purposes for your report, as an example. Cancel out of that. Live data, very important. Because I'm not dealing with a relational file, there is not an option down below here, but it would say enforce data, and it could say at the source or post aggregation. You would see that option if you're dealing with a truly relational table, relational structure cluster. But because anything else, you won't see that option. If you do test only applies to reports, meaning table file command. And that just puts like generic data out, like, you know, AB1 and 123 type of thing. And sample gives a sample based off of your data. But live is truly live. And we added this option in 9.3 that you can also apply this at runtime. Maybe while you're developing, even at runtime, when you run this, not just in preview, you want to apply that selection. And again, I know this is a quick run through, but it's just to level set depending on the different levels of individuals that are listening to this presentation. Now, also, we have the output format. Output format, you can see here I have selected runtime. That's set in the InfoAssist properties. You could say show for selection, for user selection. And you can even change what the default output is depending on whether it's a chart. And that's something, or a report, that's something your administrator would have control over. But just to briefly show that, I'm in administration console, and you can see I'm in InfoAssist properties. And if I scroll down here, you can see I have checked user selection. That's where that option comes from. And then if I scroll a little bit lower, you can see report output format and chart output format. So you can control that display as well here. Let me come back to Designer, just to showcase the format and everything. So you're really in a responsive canvas here. We have our run button. And then the very side here is what we call our templates, our content picker, if you would. It is collapsed, and we try to put the most common ones on top. Grid up here is a report type. It has by display on, meaning for every by sort value, it will be displayed for every row. That's kind of why you see the icon with all of the little filled in the first column with blue, kind of to showcase that. I could scroll down though, and I could see here, if I hover, I do have a standard report, and you can see there's little ones missing, indicating that the by field, the sort values are only displayed when they change in the request. And then we have grid here that was at the top as well. So these are both table file. There is another one that's data grid here, but that's, notice we have parentheses chart, and it'll help if I actually, there's a little arrow down here at the bottom, the lower right-hand corner. If I click it, I can expand this where you can see the common ones, but notice there's a report section here. But again, to be clear, the ones that are true reports is the standard report and the grid. Those are true table file commands. The data grid, while it looks like a report, it's truly a chart type. It's a graph file command behind the scenes. And just to showcase that, let me pick standard report. So that's what I want to work with. And I certainly could collapse this back if I want, just to get some more of that real estate. And now I have a report. Now, if I go over to the very left-hand side, to the sidebar, you'll see I have fields, right? That's where I'm actually concentrated right now. I got that little blue bar indicating that's the impact. That's what you're seeing here from being on fields, but outline. So for those of you out there that are coders, and I know that you're out there, if I right-click on content and view the source code, I can see the skeleton of what's created so far, and you can actually see the table file command right here on line 25 with the retail demo that's coming from that, and my WF retail light. I don't have anything else, but I haven't selected any fields yet for this request. I can come up here if I wanted to. I could download the source, I could search, and I can actually just exit out to come back into Designer. So I wanted to just showcase that if I do select grid and I go into the source code, you'll see by display is by display, by and on are synonymous with each other. And then if I come back and then I decide to go back to standard report, you'll see that because I've done the switching back and forth, it'll have by display off. I just wanted to point that out. That's the only difference between those two options, just to be aware of it. So, okay, I'm on standard report. And the first thing you want to know is, well, how do I create content? How do I get it on as part of this report? And there's four ways. Yes.
Before you move ahead.
Sure.
There's a question. We can save the code in the outline view.
You can actually download it. So when you're in the outline and you right click and you view source code, there's actually an option here that you can download that to your local machine. If you wanted to, you don't have to, but that is an option as well as searching for something.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Great question. And again, I know I'm going a little bit quickly because this is a limited amount of time, but again, it's to get you as much information as possible to get you to hit the ground running. right? We're creating reports specifically. So, okay, there are 4 different ways. So how do you get content as part of the report within Designer? There's 4 different ways. Now, what I can do is, let's say I want sales year, and I just double click that. And that put it right. It says, oh, you know what? That's probably because it's a dimension. It's probably going to be stored field. So that's where I'm going to put it. Now, I could have, and let's do revenue. I can actually right click on revenue if I wanted to and say add to report. If this was a chart, you would see add to chart, by the way. And I could just say add to the report. And it added it to the summaries bucket within, that's my verb object, right? I'm going to sum. Now, actually, just a little note here. You have the option to change whether it's count, detail with a counter field. So that's the count verb, print, and then really print, but it's called list because it generates that field here. And I can also change it here if I wanted to, those options. But typically, you're probably going to be in summaries. You probably want to aggregate request. If you're going to run with details and everything, then definitely you don't want to go against all of your data because that could be taking a long time to return. So it's just something to be aware of. But I'm going to stay with summaries. But either way, whether you're, and if you change the bucket of what's there, then the name on the bucket will change. So if I said counts, which kind of wouldn't make sense here, but you can see it's doing a count and you can see the bucket name changes. But then I can come back here and change it back to summaries. Okay. Now, just what I could do is if I wanted to, let me clear out. So there's 2 ways, right? I double clicked sales year into the request. Revenue, I did add to report. I could actually just drag it directly to the bucket if I wanted to. Or I could hover an X or clear, as the case may be. That's how you could get rid of it. If you do clear, it clears everything within that bucket. Or if you hover over the field. Or if I just drag revenue onto the canvas itself. It says, okay. And then if you hover over field, if you want to delete it, you could just get it, you'll get that little X and you could exit that way as well. Okay. So we have 4 ways, right? That you can do right click, add to report. You can drag it to the appropriate buckets. You can double click it and let it default, or you can put it on the canvas and let it figure out where it's going to go. But you can change things as well as appropriate. Now for this demo, I'm going to do all data just because I'm going to spend most of my time within the canvas to showcase things. So typically that's probably not something you would do, but I wanted to showcase it with all the data so we could see the numbers. So we can see we have 6 years here for sales year, and we have our revenue. Very straightforward. Yes, sure.
So there's another question about the source code. Can we edit the source code in the editor? And I believe the answer is still you can, but it's not recommended.
Right. You really can't. You should not be changing it because as there are many different ways in the language to do things, the tool is expecting things to be done in a certain way. And while you can certainly try to change it to, and if you were, you probably would edit it outside of Designer and incoming in, it would let you know there was some manual change made. It might retain it, but generally speaking, it will not, and it will override it. So it's not recommended. Now, certainly what you could do is you could create it within Designer and then adjust it accordingly if you wanted to, but then you probably wouldn't be able to come back within the Designer tool.
So the rule of thumb is if you're going to make a change and don't plan to go back to the Designer.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You can, but yeah, because you might not be able to.
Right. And like I said, for sometimes the small, subtle little things you can, but again, if that's not the way Designer see or it doesn't recognize it, then it might just clear it out and you don't have that effect anymore. So yeah, that's the rule. Create it in Designer. And we really are trying to close all of those things that, MVS has, those capabilities that might not still be there. And we really are working on that effort. And you'll see a lot of that today is here in this. So another great question. Thank you. There's coders out there. You're asking about the source code. It's coders. So I appreciate it. So, okay, we have sales year and revenue in our request. And I'm enthusiastic about this, right? Because, that's a simple request. It needs to be a little bit more complicated. The first thing you probably want to do is create a heading, right? So you notice it has heading here. And notice here when you're in settings, and if you go down to content settings here, I'm circling around it. Enable heading is enabled by default. Enable footing is not, but you certainly could do so. So let's just create a heading. So how do I do that? If I double click within the heading, it creates this editing toolbar available to the user where I can actually make the changes that I need to. So, and it is WYSIWYG. It's a WYSIWYG canvas. So let me just do something simple as retail, revenue, and if I could spell today, sales report. Just put some text there. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to say I'll leave the font the same, but I'll change the size to 20. I'll leave it bold. Here's the justification. I'll center it. I'll change the color of the text over here, and you can see I'll hover over it, and I'll select that. I could change the background if I want, and then you'll see that it actually made the change. Now, if I'm done and that's all I want to do, I can click the little X here, and that closes the editing toolbar. And just again, because it's going against all the data, you'll see it run a little bit. But if I run this, and again, it's really when you're in the responsive canvas and it says HTML5 as the output, it's really HTML output that will be generated when you run it. You can see it's a very simplistic report output and everything. And certainly if I double click in the heading again, it'll bring up the editing toolbar. It's available to me. So certainly if I wanted to change the background this time, I could do that. Probably, wouldn't want to keep that. And certainly if I run this, you'll see that the background color is still yellow, even at runtime, of course. One thing to be aware of, I'm going to come back into the heading here, and I'm just going to click the background. I'm going to put it back to no fill. So it's back to what it was. One thing to be aware of, while I can create multiple lines, all I have to do is hit enter, and I can start, typing some things. And I certainly could change this to be a different color if I wanted to, just to be aware of that, right? That's certainly valid. One thing you'll notice is the justification, though, with reports in Designer, everything, all the lines are justified whatever mechanism you choose. You cannot justify like line 1 center and then line 2 left and right. That's something we're working on, but I wanted to just point that out. Now, certainly if I save this, you'll see that that's applied, and I can run it, but just for time purposes, I won't run it again. But I'm going to come back in, and I'm just going to change that and say, you know what, I'm going to remove that, and I'll save that as my report heading. And certainly if I didn't want the heading anymore, I could uncheck it here. And then I said, oh, you know what I want to bring back? It'll retain what I had. And now the same thing for the footing. I'm going to actually enable the footing checkbox here, and you'll see the footing now is available down here. And I'm actually going to, highlight that. And let me just type in something like runtime. And then I'll take some of the variables over here that I had in my resource panel in that variables tab, and I can come in and just drag in. And I could have typed this too if I wanted to, but I could do amp for date. And then amper TOD for the date and the time. There's different options too. And then notice I have the canvas, the editing toolbar here, the WYSIWYG canvas is providing me so I can see the changes immediately. So I'll change this to 14. I'll make it bold. I'll leave the justification, but I'll make it the same color as the heading. And then I'll close that out. And while in preview, you won't see the values evaluated, those amper variables, those system variables. Certainly when I run it, you'll see the impact. So far, so good. Okay. So we have, again, very straightforward. And again, if I uncheck the box, then I'm not available. But certainly if I recheck it, what I created is still there. Now, in my resource panel, I'm going to go back to fields. And again, I know I have a very simplistic request right now. I want to change it up a little bit. I want to make it a little bit more complex. So one of the things I want to do is I'll add another sort field. Now, if I double click product category, it's going to go into the rows bucket after sales year, but then I can drag it in, or I can just drag product category into above sale year in the rows bucket. And just for you coders out there, I'm going to just go to the outline just so you can start seeing that, hey, here's the sum, right, where I have revenue, and then you can see the to buy field with product category and time year. That's the sale year, just for your reference. Okay, so far so good. Now you'll see originally I had only 6 records, right, because I just had sale year, and now I added product category, and there's 7 product categories. So now I have 42 records, you can see. Okay, let's make it a little more complicated. Chances are I just don't want to see about revenue. I want to see a little bit more detail. And let me add quantity sold, right? Now, generally speaking, the fields that are in your synonym and your master file description are not going to meet all your requirements for your requests, right? You're probably going to have to do some massaging of some data, some calculations and everything, and you certainly have that capability. Now, one of those capabilities is here in the field listing, you can add calculation either here or here. And depending on where you add it, whether it's a measure or dimension, will impact the format, the default, but you certainly could change that. Or you could do it right click on a field and add calculation that way, and it'll utilize that field in the expression, and then you could change accordingly. Notice when I do it from the field list, I have the option here, calculate at source or calculate after aggregation. Calculated source is your defined field, and calculate after aggregation is your computed field. So for purposes of what I want to do, I want to use aggregate values. I could certainly select here, make the change, etc. But I want it with revenue, so I could have done it on revenue and done it here, and then selected, and then made the appropriate changes. But if I know I want it against an aggregate or aggregate values, cancel out of here and have the capability either here in the little ellipse for the summaries bucket, or I can add calculation, and that will create it without anything in the expression. Or I could just, because I know revenue is part of my expression, I can right click on revenue and note contextually there's a lot of information available to you. I can add calculation there. Notice that when you do it from the buckets, right, because that's part of the request and it's after aggregation, it automatically says, I know what you're looking for here. I'm not even going to give you the option to change this. It has to be calculated after aggregation. So here I just want to take revenue and I'll divide that, and I can double click and quantity sold. That's all I want to do. And I'm going to call this, my calculation is really revenue per item. And that's the actual field and computed field that I'm temporary calculated field, and then my title. I could allow for missing values and do a checkbox. If you're prior to 9.3, you would see this box here, and then there will be a little ellipse all the way over on the right-hand side past the allow missing box here. You wouldn't see this and this. You would have to click the little ellipse and you get these additional options. We changed it in 9.3 to be a little bit more user-friendly, so it's all available to you. You don't have to do an extra click to obtain that information to adjust it. And then over here, you'll see, and when you see this little icon, if it's numeric, you'll kind of see that. And if it's alphanumeric, you'll see something else. So the icon can change, but if you click it, it's really editing the format. And here, I'm going to click it. I'll click this to make it 12.2. You can adjust it accordingly. Maybe I wanted my $sign on it. And down below here, I'm going to say show thousand separator. So you'll see me do this throughout. So I won't repeat what I'm doing for the other ones, but just to showcase it. And then I'm just going to hit enter. And what a great option that we have here is to validate, especially if you use functions and everything, you miss a comma or parenthesis. I do that all the time, typing so quickly. So having that validate can be very useful. This is a pretty basic calculation. So I'm going to say OK. And you'll see it automatically adds it to the summaries bucket. If I were to remove this field, it's gone from the request. If I create a defined field, it'll be in the field list so that even if it's not in a bucket, it's still available to you, right? It's just the way that it works based on whether it's before it's at the data source level versus aggregation level. And you can see here, here's the computed field that we just created from that add calculation. And okay, looks good, makes perfect sense. Now I have an option here. I want to enable column totals. Well, let me check that checkbox. And you'll see that actually it'll showcase, just give it a moment because it is going against all of the data. You'll see that it's showcasing the total here at the very bottom. Now, again, we're in the canvas. This is the responsive canvas. And notice that the revenue per item is not right. It's simply adding it, and I want it to be recalculated based on these values, right? That's what's in my calculation. So we need to kind of address that. One thing I wanted to let you know, though, there is an option here, show totals above detail. If I check that, it puts the totals at the top of the report. But if you do it within the canvas and you're in the responsive canvas, right, you'll still see it at the bottom. Now, if I run this, I just like to showcase that option. It's important. You'll see though at runtime, it is at the top, right? And certainly if I wasn't using the responsive canvas, let's say I had PDF, you'll see it as a page and you'll see that the total is at the top, even in the canvas. So I like to make that point just to be aware of it. It's just because of the responsive canvas and the way it works. Think of it similar to active. That's why it behaves that way. But here you can see when I have PDF, even in the preview, it has the total at the top. I'm going to come back and put that back to HTML5 so it's a responsive canvas again, which defaults to the HTML output. And I'm going to remove the show totals above detail, but I wanted to showcase that as an option. So I enable column totals. No, by the way, I should have just showcased when I have that check. Oh, sorry, check the wrong one. If I do show totals above detail, I just want to show you from a source code perspective, you'll see that it does on table set subtotals above. That's how that's accomplished in the language. I'm going to uncheck that. And now I'm back to my column totals, which, by the way, let me go back to the view source again. That's generated by this on table subtotal. But again, my revenue per item is not correct. It's just summing up the values, which is exactly what column totals do. They sum up the column. So I'm going to check the recalculate totals, and that actually recalculates computed fields. And you'll see now it's actually recalculated, and that value matches up with if you did the calculation with these two columns here. If I go to the source code, you'll see here now it says on table recompute, and you can see we still have our compute here as appropriate. So makes perfect sense. Looks good.
Renee?
Yes, question.
Is there a way in Designer to replicate the on-field subhead?
It's something that we are working on, but that's not there yet for the subhead subfoots. We are working on that though. Right now you have page headers and footers, but the rest of it we are working on.
And there was the question about App Studio no longer a thing once you go to 9.3, and that is not the case. It is still available.
Absolutely, it's still available. You know, we're looking to put our effort within Designer, but App Studio is still available and still supported. You can still create and develop as you wish. But we're really not putting new development into that. It's really about Designer and all of its components and giving you more flexibility. Instead of having App Studio where you had to install it locally on your machine, right? This is all web browser based. Okay, great questions though.
I think Evan just breathed a sigh of relief.
Okay, good to hear. Okay, I appreciate that, I do. So recalculate totals, that's working the way I would want and I would expect. One thing I wanted to make clear though is I'm going to add revenue multiple times. So I have, and this is, I'm going to take this out of my request. But I wanted to showcase this because it's very important when you're developing reports. I'm going to add revenue multiple times because I want to showcase something. While revenue here is being summed, I have the option to right-click contextually and change these, and I could say aggregate, and I could say maybe I want this one to be a percentage for revenue. And remember, it is running against all of the data, so it's going to take just a little bit. And then maybe this one I want to make it aggregate, and I'm going to make this average. And then for this last one, I'll make this aggregate and account. You can see you have other options available to you. But what I wanted to point out is that you'll notice that average is simply added. With our prefix operators, when you're doing it, it's just when you have the column total, it's simply adding it. And you know, for the count percent, that works out. But what about average? So what could I do in this situation to change that and adjust accordingly? Well, what I could do is I could right click on revenue and I could do an add calculation. And I can create this field that I created called revenue average, right? And change it accordingly. And then I could just say that and divide it, and I'll add revenue again. And I'll just put a CNT dot because I already have that in my request anyway, but prefix operator. I'm taking revenue, dividing it by the count of revenue. And let's just adjust the format. And like I mentioned before, I'll check the same kind of boxes, but certainly you could do what's appropriate and adjust it, and then just hit enter. And then I can validate and click OK. And now you'll see it adds that calculation to the request. And that gives me more along the lines of what I might want. So there might be other times when you need other fields, but you don't want them part of the request. So now I don't want my average AVE.revenue because it's not really going to give me what I want in terms of my calculation here. But I could see that, you know, my revenue average that I just created is calculating as I would want. Maybe I don't want to see revenue count, so I can right click on that and I can actually hide it. You know, that's certainly a capability. And because I know that this is an important topic, I'm going to discuss it here, even though I know it's a beginner session. It is kind of important. If you've dealt with within in Info Assist, while Designer doesn't have a within option where you can calculate at different sort levels, not just up to the lowest sort level by default in the report, but at higher levels, you can simulate that. That capability is there for some. Within, which typically is what you would use if you were an IA. It would be with some. So let me just do a revenue, and I'll add calculation again. So you're getting really familiar with this. And let me just give it kind of any kind of name. I'm going to say within PCAT, and I'll call this within PCAT as a title. And then I'm going to go to function tab here. And you'll see that I have partition aggregation. I could double click that in. I could take my revenue field. And if you hover over, you actually can get a breakdown of the functions and everything, you know, as more detail. But I just wanted to showcase this so you have it as reference. I'm going to put that, and I took out the comma. So that's your field that you want to do the calculation on. The next one is the sort field. So let me come back to the field list. And what do I want to use? Product category is my sort field, my high level sort field. So I want to do it on that. So I'll highlight this and drag in product category there. And then for lower, I'll just say B for the beginning, and then upper E for end. And the aggregation operator post aggregation is sum. And this will simulate a sum within that you would have been able to do with IA. And then here, I'll just change format to something like that. And let's just validate, assuming I didn't make a typo. Looks good. And I'm going to say OK. And just to clean up, just for purposes of this, I just want to remove the column totals right now. I want to just showcase the within part. It's not really part of this request, but the idea is I thought this was an important enough topic to take the time to mention it. So here you can see where it's adding up all the values, and you're just getting that total for accessories, that product category on every line. And then when the product category changes, it's the same. And how you can see this is valid, we actually have the capability where we use that function to create different options for you. So you have this option, quick transform, rolling aggregation. I could say sum, and I could say break on product category. And that'll add another calculation here. And then you can see how it's a rolling aggregation within that product category value here, and it matches up with the value that you're getting in with the within. So I know I'm doing this as a column, but I just wanted to showcase that that's a really important feature and capabilities that are there. And I know this is a beginner's guide, but again, that's important. And if you're dealing with complex requests, understanding that that capability is there, I think is more important to mention it even in a beginner's guide. So what I want to do is, I'm not really using this for my request, but I kind of wanted to mention these things. The key things to take away is if you're using prefix operators with column total, it's simply going to do an aggregation, other than if it's a calculated after aggregation field. And then you have the ability to simulate within, and you have these great options for quick transformations that can do rolling sums and everything. So I just kind of wanted to showcase that. For me, though, I'm actually going to remove these columns and go back to the 3 fields that I have, and I'll enable my column totals, and I'll do the recalculated total, so we're back where we're at. And I want to showcase now row totals. So there's the capability here that you can enable a row total. And there's two ways that it works. So if I check it right now, notice it enables that edit data format. And what you'll see is that it's going to create a total column, and it's simply going to add up the measures, the verb objects, right? Revenue, quantity sold, and revenue per item. It's simply going to add it. Now, for this report, that really doesn't make sense. Maybe if I had revenue and cost of goods, that would make a lot more sense. And but that's the way it behaves if you have a request that does not have any field in the column groups, which isn't a cross field, no cross field. I can edit the format though if I want, because it is a single field. And if I clicked it, you know, maybe I just wanted the $sign. So you'll see that it does have an impact. Now, if I decide to change this request and have an across field, so you can see that $sign is impacted. Now, let me take sale year and move that to column groups. So my by field is product category, and across is column groups of sale year. And then these are my verb objects, my calculated and real fields that are part of the request. And you can see now with the enable row totals, it disabled that edit data format, because now what it does, because the sale year is an across field, there's a column groups, it will actually add up the individual columns as a total over here as separate columns for revenue, quantity sold, and revenue per item. And as you can see, revenue per item is being simply added up. It's not really what we want. So what can we do in this situation? Well, what I have is sale year. That's my across field that you see here. I can right click on that. There's insert breaks. And if I say aggregate rows, what you'll see is I have the row total columns, but now I have this section before it from the sale year break that I did that's here, and it's still adding it up. And that's because that's all I did. I said, you know, create it in that mechanism to aggregate it. I didn't say to recalculate it. So I could come back to sale year, right click, insert breaks, and say recalculate totals. So you're going to get tired in a few minutes of me saying that. So if I say that now, you'll see that first section, which is based off the break on sale year, has now revenue per item is actually being calculated based on these values. That's exactly what I want to see. So I really don't need my row total section here. So I'm going to uncheck that. But I wanted to show you how, if it's simple additions and everything, that's great. But if you need to recalculate, this might be the way that you would accomplish that. And now you can see, if I scroll over, that I have that and it's recalculated. And now you do have some additional options here. I can right click, insert breaks. And if I go to more options, I actually have more control here. It's the same control. If I did aggregate columns from that context menu, that would be selected. Here I did recalculate total, so that's selected. It's at the current level, meaning the sort level that I'm at. I'm showing all of these fields, and we'll show in a few minutes how that can change. And then I can change the subtotal text here. So if I wanted to, I could say report, you know, row totals. I probably wouldn't say that, but, you know, I'm just going to do it. Now, you notice there's a little X here. So I'm just going to copy this. But if I hit that little X, it'll go back to what it is. So you don't have to worry about if I created it and then I wanted to go back to the default of what WebFOCUS would generate. I certainly could do that. But I'm going to change that here and put report row totals, apply it. And I just need probably another 8 minutes to go over the last part of what I want to go through. So report row totals here, you can see now I have that title. So I want to go an extra level. Let me add another sort field to this. I'm going to add product subcategory. So now you'll see the records break down a little bit further, right? We're getting more granular instead of at a higher level. And now on product category, I'm going to insert a break. And if I say, of course, if I say aggregate columns, what would you expect? Now I'm going to get that subtotal line with the revenue and the quantity sold correct, but you're going to see, right, for subtotal accessories, you can see here that it's simply adding up the values. So I want to recalculate that. Again, how do you do that? It's just use recalculate totals instead, right? It's a computed field. It will recalculate based on what's referenced in the expression of that calculated field. And now you can see that it actually has it calculated based on these values. So that looks good. And of course, I can right click again. I can go in there. And actually, let me just showcase one other thing. here. Notice video production at the very bottom here has one line and then the total, and it's really the same. Maybe I don't want to see that. I only want the line to come out if there's multiple lines, the total lines. So here I can actually right click on product category, insert breaks, go to the more options. Notice it has the recalculated totals and everything. Here I can change the total text. Maybe I'll say calculated on. But I also have this little checkbox here, only show the subtotals when the group has more than one row. I'm going to check that. I'm going to apply it, and you'll see the impact to the subtotal row with the summation values, as well as the subtotal values, as well as the revenue per item being recalculated. And you can actually, if I scroll down, you can see video production video, because there's only a single line. You don't see that calculated on being repeated. Nice little feature just to be aware of it, right?
Now, lines.
Yes, and actually that was what I was going to. Thank you. So I was going to actually showcase in the source code that what it created was the multi-lines keyword here to have that effect. Perfect. That was a great lead-in. Okay, so, and, all right, so just so that you can see everything, but here you can see that you have the multi-lines right there. And you can see the as calculated on that I just created from that, right, too. So, all right, so let's just add one little extra level on this on top of what we already have. So I'm going to add one more sort field, and I'm going to put model in. And now right away, you know, if I right click on product subcategory, insert breaks, let's just go straight with recalculate totals. I know I'm going to need that. And let that just come up. 1 second. And I really don't like the way that's displayed. I really do want to change that. So let me actually go into product subcategory, insert breaks, and I'm going to go into more options. And for the subtotal text, I'm going to change that to, you know, prod subcat, something like that. Just to give you something there, a little different. And let that run. And now you can see that here, right? And you can see it's being recalculated. Now, what if I wanted to go a different further? And you can still see the break calculated on, right, the product, but here is the breaks on product subcategory. Makes perfect sense. What if for product subcategory, I don't want to see the values of revenue and quantity sold for that? Well, I have the capability when I do the insert break and I go to the more options, right? On product subcategory, right, you can see that's where I'm at. I'm going to uncheck revenue and quantity sold. You actually even have the ability to change the calculation. I just want revenue per item to be displayed. I'm going to apply that. Just so that you're aware of what's available and how you can control your requests that you're creating. And now you can see that you don't see those values there for revenue and quantity sold on the subtotal for the product subcategory, but certainly for product category, I still see that, because at that level, I do have them all displayed. But I wanted to showcase that was certainly an option. And I know we're running short on time. I'm through most of what I wanted to mention at a level, but I wanted to just showcase filters briefly, because static filters. So I'm just going to put model in this request, because I kind of wanted to show. Actually, let me cancel out of that. I just wanted to go to the end of the report. Remember, video production now has all these rows, and so we are getting that calculated subtotals being displayed, right? Now, what I could do is just to showcase that multi-lines is still having an impact. If you do a filter, you can do value or field, just briefly mentioning that. But here it's going to be value. I could select from data. If I do file, it's a manual file, a local file that you bring values in. But I'm going to select low values from the data. And what I kind of want is exclude some values except to just have one. So that one's there. Let me go to the next one. And I know that's another model value. And then go to the end and come back here. And these, I think, with 3 others. I think that's the 5. I have them. And then I'm going to say exclude. Give me everything but these, right? Save it. Now I have that filter. That filter is always applied to everything. There's no user interaction with that. It's a static filter. And I just want to showcase through the canvas, because we are showing all the data, you'll see the impact here, right? You only get that one line. That's because of the multi-lines. And just to showcase it from a source perspective, we still have that multi-lines and everything. If I scroll down to the bottom, just so that I can showcase everything here, you can see here where I have that where clause, right? And saying not equal. And then I just wanted to showcase just briefly, Walter, do I still have a few more minutes? Will you have enough time for what you need?
I can give you maybe 2.
Okay, let me just quickly showcase. What if I did another filter? And let me add sale year. And I'll add sale year, and I'll select the values from the data and load the values. And I'll just pick 23 and 24. Save it. These will be ended together. You'll see in the source code 2 where clauses. So there's an implicit and. If I needed them to be ORed, the way you would accomplish that is this little filter icon, edit filter expression. And then you'll pop up this little canvas here. And if I drag sale year on top of model, they're still ended, but I have an option here with the little ellipse, change it to OR, apply. And why I had 109 records, now because they're ORed instead of ended, I'm actually going to see more records than that, 158. And if I go to the end, you'll actually see with the video production, because now those records are, because of the OR condition, they all have 2023 and 2024. They're still going to be in the request. So that's why you don't see the multi-line having an impact here. But I just wanted to showcase it. And then if I didn't want that, I could disband the group, apply it, and I can close this out. So then I'll go back to 109. Quickly, the format option, just to showcase, here in the general dropdown, you have where you can change your theme as appropriate. Designer 2018 is the default. But if you go to output settings, you can impact your report. I kind of talked about this like with Excel and everything and other times in the past. I just wanted to do something like freeze for this report because it's HTML. And let me just run that just so that you can see something in terms of a final report. I mean, definitely you can make additional adjustments and everything. And again, this is just really a beginner's guide, but this should really showcase. But here you can see how you have the heading and the footing and the titles are actually frozen, and you can scroll through your data. And I could have changed no data for those missing data values as well and had an impact on that. So I know I did provide you with a lot of information. And really, we did get through all that I really kind of wanted to discuss as a beginner's guide. But hopefully, you can go back and hit the ground running and be able to generate a report, and even a complex report, in a relatively short period of time. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time, and check and see if there's any questions.
I think we're caught up.
Okay. Sounds good.
So usually when we do these sessions, my thing is I want you to not get everything, but at least hopefully remember you saw it, so you can always go back. Don't forget, the beginning of next week, you'll get an email with a link to the recording, and you'll get the slides also. All right. So that concludes the normal part of the session before we go into the mainframe part. Thanks everybody for coming. Please remember to fill out your evaluations. And let me get started here. Hopefully we'll see you next month. Oh, speaking of next month, there's not going to be a designer topic next month. There will be a data science machine learning session. So we're going to highlight the different things that we have done in regards to machine learning and data science on the May session. Good to see you, John. Bye, Margaret. All right. Let me share. Okay. So on the mainframe, we have 2 environments. We have the MVS environment and we have the USS environment. The MVS is also the ZOS environment. So if you run Focus, traditionally you're running under TSO. TSO is running under MVS. If you're running the reporting server, The reporting server can run PDS, which is running on the MVS side, because it creates MVS datasets, or you can run it on the USS side in the Unix System Services environment. What I'm going to show you is, regardless of what area you're in, you can store your output or access files for reporting on either side of the fence. So USS MVS, yes, please. So why would you do this? So I have the first two slides are talking about when would you want to put your data stored on MVS, the ZOS, versus USS. So this is here for you to peruse. I'm not going to go over these. One of the situations that I've had is I had a share or a mapped drive in Windows that was mapped to my USS NFS mounting. So I was able to write to it directly from USS. And because it was a share, I was then able to map it to my Windows drives. So anything that I stored and saved over there was automatically accessible from my Windows environment. So if I created an HTML form, an Excel worksheet, I could just save it using this mechanism and then just go to my Windows Explorer, go to that drive and open it up. So I wouldn't really have to do my own FTP. All right, so that one was when to put it on MVS and when to put it on Unix System Services. So the syntax of how you're going to do this is location, location, location. If you do it from inside Focus or WebFOCUS, which is the easiest, you can do it from a CList, or you can allocate your files from JCL. So from inside your procedure, inside Focus or WebFOCUS, remember this goes both ways. If you want to create an MVS ZOS file or data set, use the dynam allocate command. So here I'm dynam allocating file, you give it the DD name or the Focus WebFOCUS handle, the physical data set name with DA, and then I'm saying reuse because if I already have an allocation for DD name, I want to reuse it with this new allocation. And the share says that I'm going to share it. Other people can access this data set at the same time. If you want to validate that this happened, you can do a question mark TSO DD name and then give it the name, your DD name of your allocation. If you want to go to USS, you should use a file def. File def DD name, we're saying it's going to go to disk. Give it your full path to your file name with the file name. And if you want to see that that's in play, you can do question mark file def. In a CList, we've used your standard allocate again. So I got allocate DD name or allocate file, your DD name, and then either file or your dataset name, which has your actual dataset name in it. If it already exists and you're going to do a share, fine. If you're creating it new, then you will also need to add the additional file attributes like LRECL and space record format, those things. And if you're going to append to the file, you can add the mod qualifier. Now, I don't, if you're going to the USS side, you're going to also use allocate, DD name, and then the name. But then your file, instead of having your data set in tick marks, you're going to have your path in the parentheses. So pretty simple. Note that while allocate provides basic control, it doesn't offer the granular control of path ops. Well, you're going to say, what is path ops? Because we haven't gotten there, but that's where the JCL comes in. So if you're going to MVS dataset in JCL, it's just your standard DD card, DD DSN equals name, and then your disposition. But if you're going to USS, you no longer have a DSN, you have a path. and the path includes the name. And then you have all sorts of options you can add. So in here we have path ops. So this says it's going to be read write, RD, WR. The O create says if it doesn't exist, create it. And the O trunc says if it does exist, then wipe it out. So it's going to start from fresh. The path mode is your change mod. It's your permissions. So we have the user can read, the user can write, the group can read, and other can read. So unless you're the owner, you can't write, but you can read. Yeah. Here's some other examples to go to USS in JCL. There are some other parameters, like we have file data equals record. We have file data equals text. Again, these are optional, which we didn't have in the original ones. So the first set that I had on this slide is what I've used. No, didn't go too, didn't go far enough. There we go. So the path ops and the path mode are the only one, and the path are the only ones we have. If you notice in here, there's also a path disposition, just like disposition for a data set. And it tells you if the job finishes without a problem, we're going to keep the output file. And if it abandons, we're going to delete it, just like the normal disk. All right, before we go to questions, I'm going to do a quick demo. At least I'm going to try to. Okay, so here's my MVS environment. I'm going into a 9.3 version. So right now we're looking at 9.3.4. So if I don't have any file def to my output file, it's going to go to a temporary data set. And the question mark TSODD name shows that it went to a temporary data set. If I want to go to a physical data set, I'll have to do the dynam alloc, make it new, or have one already have that exists and share it, and then it will go there. So let me free this. And I'm going to come over to my USS side. And I created a directory called Focus Friday, which has one file in there. So I'm going to remove it. So now it's empty. Nothing up my sleeves. Here. I'll put my file def back in. So when this runs, I'm going to get a master from my car H. And because we did the file def to this physical data set, it's going to put the data there. Question mark TSODD name isn't going to do anything, but I should be able to do question mark file def. So I get my 18 rows. And if you see at the very top of my file def, I have my definition of my car H going to the physical data set. And if I jump over to my USS environment, there's my data set. That's my car H. And there's the output file. Notice some of it is unreadable because we had numeric data that was stored in internal format. If I come back here now, I can do table file my car H, print star end, and I get the records that I just put in that output. And you're going to say, oh, well, how do I know that that's actually happened and you didn't have a data set already lying around? Good question. So let's go back into the code and let's change this up a little bit and let's just do some sales by country. And I'll take out the question mark file def because we saw that that worked. Now I have 5 rows of output. And if I table file my car H, print star, I get the output of the new query. So any questions on that? So again, you can do it if you're in WebFOCUS and you're running on the USS side and you need to create a data set on the MVS side, you have the ability of doing the dynamic. Just as on the focus world, you can go and do it on the using the file def. All right. I have nothing else. Again, please remember to fill out your evaluations. And hopefully we'll see you next month.